fell on your face, the whole world's going to know it and you're dead. So I wanted to be someplace where if I fell on my face.
Scott Hall, known to wrestling fans as Razor Ramon, one of the coolest and most iconic wrestlers of the 90s. But outside the ring, his life was far from perfect. Today, we're diving into the unbelievable crimes of Scott Hall, a story that's as shocking as it is heartbreaking. Scott Hall had the look, the swagger, and the talent to back it all up. Whether as Razor Ramon or as part of the New World Order in WCW, he was a true wrestling superstar. But behind the bright lights, Scott was battling his demons. Our story kicks off in 1983, long before Scott Hall became a household name in wrestling. One night in Orlando, Florida, Hall found himself in a situation that would stick with him for the rest of his life. Outside a nightclub, he got into a confrontation with another man. Things escalated quickly, and at one point, Hall wrestled the man's gun away from him. In the heat of the moment, Scott pulled the trigger and shot the man in the head. It was a horrifying event, and while Hall always said it was an act of self-defense, he was charged with second-degree murder. The charges were later dropped due to a lack of evidence. But this wasn't something Hall could just walk away from mentally. In a 2011 interview with ESPN, he opened up about how that night haunted him for years. This event not only left a mark on his conscience, but also had a ripple effect on his mental health, which would play a significant role in the challenges he faced later on. Even after the nightclub incident, Scott Hall couldn't stay out of trouble. Fast forward to 1998, Hall was arrested again, this time for allegedly groping a 56-year-old woman outside a hotel in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. This incident happened when Hall was still a major player in the wrestling world, but it tarnished his public image. Then in 2008, things took another wild turn during a roast for the Iron Sheik. These roasts are usually all about jokes and fun, but when comedian Jimmy Graham made a crack about the tragic death of Owen Hart, Hall lost it. Furious, he stormed the stage, knocked over the podium, grabbed the microphone, and yelled at the comedian about how disrespectful the joke was. Graham later wrote about the incident on his MySpace page. Remember MySpace? Claiming that Hall had been drinking heavily that night. Hall was arrested for disorderly conduct, but the trouble didn't stop there. In May 2010, Hall was at a bar in Chulota, Florida. After drinking heavily, he became aggressive toward the staff and even other wrestlers who were present. The police were called to calm things down, but when they arrived, Hall was shouting and swearing. He was charged with disorderly conduct and resisting an officer. At the time, Hall told the cops he was an unemployed professional wrestler, even though he still had a contract with TNA Wrestling. Sadly, TNA let him go shortly after that incident. When it comes to his personal life, Scott Hall experienced a lot of ups and downs. He married Dana Lee Bergio in 1990, and they had 2 children, a son, Cody, and a daughter, Cassidy. Cody would eventually follow in his father's footsteps and become a wrestler. But while Hall's career was taking off, his personal life was unraveling. His addiction to drugs and alcohol created a massive strain on his marriage, and in 1998, Dana and Scott divorced. A year later, they remarried, but it didn't last. By 2001, they were divorced for the second time. Hall's battle with addiction was out in the open at this point, and it was clear that it was taking a toll on all his relationships. In 2006, he married Jessica Hart, but this marriage didn't fare much better. They divorced just a year later. Hall's struggles were so intense that they even became part of his wrestling storylines. In the late 90s, WCW incorporated his real-life battles with alcohol into a controversial plot. However, his personal issues were far from just a storyline. In one notable incident, Hall keyed a limousine while intoxicated, causing $2,000 in damages. Scott Hall's struggles with addiction weren't just a phase, they were a lifelong battle. After TNA Wrestling let him go in 2010, Hall checked into rehab, with WWE covering the cost. But his health was declining rapidly. Within weeks, Hall had both a defibrillator and a pacemaker implanted in his chest. It didn't end there. He was also hospitalized for double pneumonia not once, but twice in the same year. On top of that, Hall began suffering from seizures and was diagnosed with epilepsy. The condition was so severe that he had to take 11 different medications every day just to manage his heart and seizures. In 2011, Hall's situation hit a new low when he was rushed to the hospital after a seizure. Reports surfaced that Hall had overdosed on a combination of opioids and benzodiazepines. It was a wake-up call for everyone who knew him. But the most telling part of his story came from his close friend Kevin Nash. Nash revealed that Hall's downward spiral with addiction might have stemmed from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, dating all the way back to that 1983 nightclub incident. Hall carried emotional scars that never really healed, and his way of coping was through substances. Born on October 20th, 1958 in Maryland, Scott Hall left a lasting mark on the wrestling industry. His career really took off when he joined the WWF, now WWE, in 1992, where he created the iconic Razor Ramon character, a smooth-talking bad guy with a toothpick flick that became his signature. During his time there, he won the Intercontinental Championship 4 times, which solidified his place as a fan favorite. In 1996, Hall made a bold move by jumping ship to rival promotion WCW, where he co-founded the legendary New World Order NWO faction alongside Hulk Hogan and Kevin Nash. This group shook up the wrestling scene in the late 90s, and Hall went on to become a 2-time WCW United States champion and a 7-time WCW Tag Team champion. He was an absolute force in the ring during that era. But Hall's career wasn't just about titles and championships. He wrestled all over the world, including for ECW, New Japan Pro Wrestling, and TNA, where he captured even more titles. Despite never holding a world championship in a major promotion, Scott Hall earned tons of respect in the wrestling community and was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame twice, first as a singles competitor in 2014 and later as part of the NWO in 2020. Scott Hall's legacy in professional wrestling is undeniable. Whether as Razor Ramon or as a founding member of the NWO, he left an indelible mark on fans and the industry as a whole. Sadly, in March 2022, Scott Hall was hospitalized after falling and breaking his hip. He was stuck on the floor for days until his friend, Diamond Dallas Page, found him during a wellness check and rushed him to the hospital. Hall had surgery to replace his hip, but during the procedure, a blood clot caused him to suffer 3 heart attacks on March 12, 2022. He was put on life support at Wellstar Kennestone Hospital in Marietta, Georgia. 2 days later, on March 14th, his family came to be by his side, and he was taken off life support. Hall passed away a few hours later at the age of 63. WWE honored him with a tribute during that day's episode of Raw. A few days after his death, Sean Waltman shared that Hall had relapsed into alcohol abuse during the COVID-19 lockdowns as isolation took a toll on him. Hall lost significant weight, dropping to 210 pounds from his usual 287. Waltman also revealed that Hall wasn't doing well the night before his 2021 Hall of Fame induction, and even passed out at a bar. Over the next 2 years, his health worsened, and Waltman even offered to move in with him in February 2022 to help. Page also stepped in again to assist Hall with his alcoholism. So what do you think about Scott Hall's incredible story? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into his life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories on wrestling's most unforgettable figures. Worsened, and Waltman even offered to move in with him in February 2022 to help. Page also stepped in again to assist Hall with his alcoholism. So what do you think about Scott Hall's incredible story? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into his life, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories on wrestling's most unforgettable figures.